Welcome to video 1.3. Okay, this one is going to be very short. I'm going to talk about the definition of what likelihood means. I was going to make it longer. I'm going to first give the definition, and then I'm going to give an example. But I think I'm going to do that in the example in 1.4. So first, let's give the exactly what I mean by what is the definition of likelihood. And what I'm going to do is first I'm going to state the definition. By the way, this comes from, hopefully y'all have, this should be in Dropbox. You should have this document. This is a page from a book by Anthony Flew, A Dictionary of Philosophy. Okay, so this is like an econometrics class, but somehow I'm using a philosophy book. It's so important. This what likelihood means that even in philosophy books are they describing it. Not only that, let me talk a little bit about who Anthony Flew is, real quick. Okay. You should have this document too, and he is a philosopher. He died in 2010. This is his obituary. It was in the New York Times in 2010. Now, so for our class, he's important because he has a little entry in his dictionary of philosophy about likelihood. But here's why he was even more famous. He was a follower, protege, maybe, of the great philosopher Karl Popper. Hopefully, a lot of you have heard of Karl Popper. If not, this is George Mason economics. Hopefully, you've all heard about Friedrich Hayek. Karl Popper was a very good friend, I think probably the best friend of Friedrich Hayek. They were both born in Austria. Karl Popper, if you've heard of the notion of falsifiability, is a theory falsifiable or not? And Popper discussed, well, we shouldn't really call it, if it's not falsifiable. And what he meant by that, can you imagine a way, could imagine a set of data or imagine a set of observations that would make you not believe the theory, make you believe the theory is not true. If you can't do that, if you can't imagine, okay, doesn't have to be, those data don't have to exist, but at least potentially have to exist. You can imagine them. And if you can't do that, the theory is not testable, okay? What he meant is also it's not falsifiable. And if so, we shouldn't call it science. We shouldn't call it scientific, okay? So if you get a PhD in a STEM subject, pretty much everyone has learned that notion. And the best schools, they learn who is responsible for it. Is Karl Popper. And Karl Popper was born somewhere around 1900. I think it was like 1902, something like that. Died, I think, in the early or mid 90s. So his point was a big point of Popper's philosophy is falsifiability. One of his proteges, Anthony Flew. By the way, a quick anecdote. When I was an undergrad, I was a research assistant for a man named William Bartley, who is also a follower, protege of Karl Popper. Bartley was the editor of the collected works of Friedrich Hayek. He was also the editor of the collected works of Karl Popper. And I was his research assistant for a big part of that. Now, Bartley died before he finished it, but before he died, I was his research assistant. I did a lot of the photocopying for that. A lot of the grunt work I did. So I like to joke, although I haven't read everything by Karl Popper or read everything by Friedrich Hayek, I have photocopied everything they've ever written. So I'm kind of familiar with some of these followers, and I'm a follower of both, but Flew is too. Now, Flew was a famous atheist, and his point was the reason he was an atheist, he felt like Karl Popper, all of our beliefs should be falsifiable. And he said, lots of religion is not falsifiable. He said, and if it's not falsifiable, you can't test it. I'm not going to believe it. I give the benefit of the doubt to the other side. I give the benefit of the doubt to the atheist side. Said, but he would say that atheism is falsifiable. You see a miracle. You see Jesus or Muhammad or whoever floating down from the sky and explaining, here's the true religion. That would falsify atheism. That's what Flew would say. And therefore, he said, that's why I'm an atheist, and I'll keep believing that way till I see something that makes me, a miracle makes me believe the other way. That's the way he believed until he learned about the fine-tuning of the universe. And this is a point that a lot of physicists, chemists will say. There are certain things, like how's it go? If I can remember this right, the strong force and the weak force. There's 4 fundamental forces, and we've measured, how strong those forces are, and you can measure the ratio of those two, and there are various things like this, and it turns out if the ratio of those two were off by like a trillionth of a percent, if they were just differed by a trillionth of a percent, then it turns out the element carbon is not possible, cannot exist. And if carbon can't exist, you can't have these long molecules like DNA, which means that life can't exist. And so Flew said, it's so fine-tuned. It's almost looks like an intelligent life or something, an intelligent design. Something happened with the universe that can't have just happened by randomness. And so he that made him disbelieve atheism. He said, now I'm actually believe that there's something out there. This may not be the Christian God or the Muslim God or any other God that we humans worship. He said, there's probably something, maybe we're a simulation of some, alien civilization, but there's something out there. Anyway, all that's beyond the scope of this course, but the point is that Flew is thinking deep thoughts. He is thinking deep things. And one, along with whether God exists or not, he's talking about likelihood, okay? And as he discusses, okay, so that talk about religion, that's just a way to motivate how important the notion of likelihood is. Okay, so here's what likelihood means. In connection with a statistical hypothesis on a body of data, the chance of those data occurring if the hypothesis is true. Okay, that's the key sentence. Okay, by the way, you might want to just rewrite that yourself. I want you to learn that. Okay, the likelihood does not give directly the probability of the hypothesis because the sum of the likelihoods of rival hypotheses may be much greater than one. I'm going to explain it, or they may be less than one. Okay, but often the best estimate of a distribution may be that which has the maximum likelihood on the given data. Okay, that's what we're going to do. We're going to maximize the likelihood function throughout this course, and we're going to show why when you do that, there's certain properties of the parameters we get that those are like have important properties of those estimates that we derive from that method. Okay. And the method of maximum likelihood counseled by R.A. Fisher recommends this estimation. Okay. So that is a verbal definition of what likelihood means. Okay, so that is part 1.3. Part 1.4, I'm giving an example of a likelihood function and also how we'll maximize it. Okay, see you there, in lecture 1.4.